Ladies and gentlemen, before we talk about success, we must understand law. Everything in life rises and falls on law. Business is not an experiment. It is an environment governed by principles older than any company on earth. And when you violate a law, you don't break the law breaks you. But when you understand these 4 laws and you align your ideas, your vision, and your strategy with them, your business becomes unstoppable. Today, we're not just learning information, we're unlocking a framework that can transform your influence, your impact, and your future. The first law teaches us something many people ignore, yet it determines whether a business lives or dies. Every business, every idea, every venture is born into a world governed by laws. And the first law is this: you cannot succeed in the marketplace without understanding the principles that govern it. You don't rise by passion alone. You rise by obedience to structure. And when you ignore the structure ignores you. That is why some people work hard for years, pouring energy, money, and emotion into something that never grows, because effort without alignment always leads to frustration. A business does not respond to how much you love it. It responds to how well you understand the environment it operates in. This is why we talk about irreplaceable laws, because these laws don't adjust to you, you adjust to them. Think about it. Gravity doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care whether you're excited, committed, or passionate. If you step off a building, you fall. Not because gravity is your enemy, but because you ignored the law. Business works the same way. If you violate the principles of vision, structure, demand, purpose, or value, the law breaks you. And the tragedy today is that many people start a business emotionally, not strategically. They start because they are tired of working for someone else. They start because they think entrepreneurship means freedom. They start because they like the idea of independence. But the marketplace is not moved by your emotions. It is moved by your understanding. So the question becomes, do you know the laws that govern the thing you are trying to build? If not, then failure is not a mystery. It is a predictable outcome. But here is the good news. Laws make success predictable. If you apply them correctly, consistently, and intentionally, the result becomes inevitable. You don't have to wonder if your business will grow. You don't have to guess whether your ideas will thrive. You don't have to hope that your efforts will be rewarded. Laws guarantee outcomes. They make excellence repeatable, and they turn dreams into measurable realities. This is why the first law is so critical. It forces you to step back and ask the most important questions. What principles am I obeying? What systems govern my industry? What patterns rule my environment? What unseen structures determine my outcomes? Because until you understand the laws, you cannot leverage them. And until you leverage them, you cannot rise above the competition. Success is not magic, it is mastery. So as we move forward, keep this in mind. Vision without laws leads to collapse. But vision aligned with law produces momentum, consistency, expansion, and ultimately dominance. And once you grasp this first law, something powerful begins to happen. Your thinking changes, your strategy changes, and your confidence changes. Because you realize that success is not accidental, it is engineered. And now, once we understand the first law, it naturally leads us into the second. Because if laws govern business, then what defines the purpose of business? Let's go deeper. The second law confronts a truth most people never stop long enough to consider. Business does not fail because of competition. It fails because of a lack of clarity. When you don't know why something exists, you cannot protect it, you cannot direct it, and you cannot multiply it. Purpose is the anchor of every successful enterprise. Without it, the storms of pressure, uncertainty, and change will toss you in every direction until you lose your identity in the very market you were trying to impact. Every product that survives has a reason for being. Every company that endures has a purpose beyond profit. Profit is a result, not a purpose. Profit is the echo, not the voice. And yet so many business owners chase the echo, hoping it will become the sound. They chase money without establishing meaning. They chase growth without defining grounding. They chase customers without clarifying calling. But a business without purpose is like a ship without a compass, motion everywhere, direction nowhere. Think about the great businesses that dominate the marketplace. They are clear, crystal clear. They know what problem they solve. They know who they serve. They know what value they carry. And because they know their purpose, they don't compete. They differentiate. They don't chase trends. They create them. They don't fear disruption. They become the disruptors. So the question is, what is the purpose of your business? Why does it exist? What gap does it fill? What change does it bring? What pain does it remove? Purpose gives birth to identity. Identity gives birth to direction. And direction gives birth to strategy. Without that chain, your business becomes reactive instead of proactive. You respond to pressure instead of creating momentum. You imitate others instead of leading your own lane. This is why the marketplace is filled with businesses that look the same, sound the same, and die the same, because they never discovered what made them necessary. Purpose is the law that protects you from dilution. When you understand your purpose, you stop trying to be everywhere, and you focus on being effective where your value is needed most. You stop trying to serve everyone, and you start serving the ones assigned to you. You stop trying to fit in, and you start standing out. That shift changes everything. It transforms the way you design, the way you market, the way you communicate, the way you price, the way you build, the way you grow. And here's the beauty: purpose makes decisions easier. When you know your why, your how becomes clearer, and your when becomes intentional. Purpose removes the guesswork. It reduces stress. It eliminates unnecessary risks. It attracts the right partners, the right customers, the right team. Because purpose acts like a magnet, pulling in what belongs and pushing away what doesn't. But here is the part that leads us deeper. Once you know the purpose of your business, you must now confront a powerful question. How does your purpose translate into value the marketplace cannot ignore? Because purpose without value remains invisible. And that brings us to the third law, where everything begins to take shape. Let's go further. The third law introduces a reality many overlook. The marketplace does not reward existence, it rewards value. You are not paid because you show up. You are paid because you bring something that cannot be ignored, cannot be replaced, and cannot be easily duplicated. Value is the currency of influence. It is the foundation of growth, and it is the only language the marketplace truly understands. People don't buy products, they buy solutions. They don't buy services, they buy outcomes. They don't buy brands, they buy benefits. So the question becomes, what value are you offering? Not the value you think you're offering, but the value people are willing to exchange something for. Many businesses fail not because they lack passion or purpose, but because they never translate those two into tangible value that answers a real demand. Value begins with understanding a problem, confronting a need, seeing a gap, and then filling it with excellence. Not average work, not cheap substitutes. Excellence. Because the marketplace does not reward effort, it rewards results. You can work hard and still fail if your work does not produce what people actually desire. Hard work without value is just sweat. Hard work with value becomes wealth. And here's something important. Value must be clear. You must express it, demonstrate it, and embody it. If people cannot understand your value in seconds, they will ignore you in seconds. This is why some businesses with great potential remain invisible, while others with lesser potential dominate, because one communicates value, the other hides it behind confusion. Value also requires evolution. What worked yesterday may not work today. The market is alive. It shifts, it changes, it matures. If your value never adapts, your relevance will expire. This is where many leaders struggle. They cling to old methods while the world moves forward. But if you are committed to value, you are committed to improvement, innovation, creativity, and continuous refinement. Because value is not a moment, it is a movement. And when value is consistent, something powerful happens. Trust is formed. People return. People refer. People recommend. People follow. Trust is the fruit of sustained value. And trust is the most expensive asset in the marketplace. Once people trust your value, price becomes secondary, competition becomes irrelevant, and demand becomes natural. But it all begins with the courage to ask yourself, what value am I truly delivering? Who needs it? How can I elevate it? How can I protect it? But here is the tension and the transition. Because value alone is not enough. Value must be delivered. Value must be structured. Value must be multiplied. And that requires an entirely different law, one that governs systems, processes, and the architecture of growth. So after understanding value, we must ask the next vital question. How do you build a structure strong enough to carry that value into expansion, influence, and sustainability? That is where the fourth law takes us, and it changes everything. The fourth law reveals something that separates thriving businesses from those that collapse under their own potential. Value without structure cannot survive. You can have brilliance, creativity, passion, and purpose, but if you do not build a system capable of carrying that value, it will eventually crumble under pressure. Structure is the skeleton of success. Without it, everything becomes fragile, every decision becomes reactive, every challenge becomes overwhelming, and every opportunity becomes wasted potential. The marketplace is not impressed by ideas, it rewards systems. Ideas ignite possibility, but systems create sustainability. And sustainability is what transforms a moment of success into a legacy of impact. So the question becomes, what structure supports your business? Not the structure you hope to build someday, but the structure you are operating with right now. Many leaders dream of growth while functioning in chaos. They want expansion, but they resist organization. They want multiplication, but they avoid accountability. But nothing multiplies without order, not even nature itself. Think of a seed. A seed is pure potential, yet it cannot grow unless it is placed in a structured environment, soil, temperature, water, timing. Structure activates growth. The same is true for your business. You must have systems for delivery, systems for communication, systems for management, systems for decision-making, systems for consistency. Because if everything depends on you, your business is not a business, it is a burden. And burdens do not grow, they drain. Structure protects value. It ensures that excellence is repeatable, predictable, and scalable. With structure, you can increase your capacity without losing your identity. You can handle more clients, more demand, more impact, without sacrificing the quality that sets you apart. Structure frees you from the trap of working in the business instead of working on the business. It shifts your role from being the engine to being the architect. But here's the challenge. Structure requires discipline. It requires letting go of comfort. It requires adjusting habits. It requires confronting weaknesses. And it requires embracing the truth that no vision becomes great by accident. You must build the internal world of your business before the external world can expand. Order precedes growth. Alignment precedes acceleration. When structure is established, momentum begins. Teams work in harmony. Customers experience consistency. Processes become predictable. Stress decreases. Confidence increases. And suddenly, your business becomes more than a passion. It becomes a machine of value, ready for expansion, influence, and longevity. But even here, this is not the end. Because structure is the final law of business, but it is not the final step of your journey. Once you understand the laws, once you embrace purpose, value, and structure, there is something you must now do next. Something that determines whether these laws remain theory or become transformation. And that next step will determine everything. The fifth point brings us into a realm many entrepreneurs overlook. Not because it isn't important, but because it requires a level of responsibility most people avoid. After you understand the laws, after you align your purpose, after you define your value, after you build your structure, the next requirement is execution with discipline. Not excitement, not emotion. Discipline. The power to do what must be done even when you don't feel like doing it. Because the marketplace does not reward intention, it rewards consistent action. Every great business is built on the foundation of repeated decisions, repeated habits, repeated commitment. Discipline is the bridge between knowledge and results. You can know every law. You can quote every principle. You can study strategy for years. But without discipline, none of it becomes reality. The world is full of talented dreamers, but the marketplace is shaped by disciplined doers. So the question becomes, are you consistent enough to manifest what you envision? Discipline requires you to set standards and keep them, to establish routines and follow them, to define priorities and honor them. It means saying no to distractions, no to shortcuts, no to anything that steals focus from your purpose. Discipline is the ability to protect what matters, even when pressure pushes you to compromise. This is why many entrepreneurs start strong but fade quickly. Their passion was loud, but their discipline was silent. And passion without discipline always leads to burnout. Discipline also demands accountability. You cannot grow if you refuse correction. You cannot expand if you resist improvement. You cannot rise if you fight every adjustment that challenges your comfort. Discipline forces you to confront your habits, your patterns, your inconsistencies, because anything you refuse to confront will eventually control you. And if your habits control you more than your vision controls you, your business will always remain smaller than your potential. But here is the beauty. Once discipline becomes a lifestyle, momentum becomes natural. You no longer need motivation to move. Movement becomes automatic. You no longer need inspiration to act. Action becomes instinct. And when your actions become aligned with the laws you've learned, results become predictable. People begin to trust your consistency. Opportunities begin to find your name. Doors open not because you're lucky, but because you're disciplined. And discipline produces another powerful result, character. The kind of character that can sustain growth, manage pressure, handle success, and remain steady when influence increases. Without discipline, blessings become burdens. But with discipline, growth becomes manageable. Success becomes sustainable. And expansion becomes intentional. Yet even now, even after discipline is applied, there is one more dimension that determines whether your journey stops at success or continues into significance. a dimension that elevates your business beyond profit, beyond reputation, beyond achievement. Because after discipline, there is a higher law you must embrace. And when you understand this one, everything changes. The sixth point introduces a dimension many never reach. Not because they lack intelligence or courage or ability, but because they stop too early. They settle at success, unaware that success is not the final destination. There is a realm above achievement, above growth, above financial prosperity, and that realm is impact. The highest law of business is not profit, it is purpose expressed through influence that outlives you. Because a business that dies with you was never truly a business, it was a job with a bigger name. Impact demands that you think beyond the next sale, beyond the next customer, beyond the next quarter. It forces you to ask, what legacy am I building? What transformation am I creating? What difference will my presence make in the lives of others? Impact is the measure of meaning. It is the evidence that your purpose was not just understood, but transferred. And true impact begins when your business becomes bigger than your personal benefit. When you understand this law, your decisions shift. You no longer build just for profit. You build for generations. You design systems that other people can inherit. You create opportunities others can step into. You build teams that can function without your constant involvement. Because the ultimate test of leadership is not how much you do, but how much continues without you. Impact is the ability to step back and watch your vision move forward through others. And here is the irony. When you focus on impact, profit increases. When you focus on significance, influence expands. When you focus on serving others, the marketplace rewards you in ways you did not anticipate. Impact multiplies value, and value attracts provision. This is why the most influential companies in the world today are not merely providers, they are changers, shapers, transformers. They have embedded their identity so deeply into the marketplace that removing them would leave a noticeable gap. Impact also requires integrity, because influence without character becomes dangerous. You cannot build something meant to last if your principles shift with pressure. Your values must remain steady. Your ethics must remain unshakable. Your leadership must remain grounded. Impact demands trust, and trust is earned through consistency, transparency, and honor. When people trust your impact, they trust your brand. And when they trust your brand, your business becomes unbreakable. But impact demands one more thing: courage. The courage to stand out, the courage to be different, the courage to pursue excellence when mediocrity is easier, the courage to say no when others compromise, the courage to build something meaningful even when the world is focused on the moment. Because impact is not created in comfort, it is created in conviction. So the question becomes, will you be satisfied with success, or will you pursue significance? Will you build for today, or will you build for generations? Will your business touch wallets, or will it touch lives? That decision determines everything. And now, as we conclude, let these final words settle deeply. Success is what you achieve. Impact is what you leave behind. Success builds income. Impact builds influence. Success lifts you. Impact lifts others. And true greatness is measured by the legacy your vision creates.